Hey guys, Erica Schwartz here. Today I'm going to talk about how to level up your college essays, revision strategies. So here's just a little bit about me before we start. I'm a UC alum, a UC Berkeley alum. I've been working with kids for 10 years on their college essays, and I've helped kids get into a number of amazing universities, including this last year, Princeton, Harvard, UCLA, and Berkeley. And I really love what I do. Okay, so leveling up. Let's talk about this. How do we level up our essay? So if you have a draft or you have a couple drafts that you've been working on, how do you take your essay or your essays to the next level? So don't be too basic, don't be too extra. So how do we do that? So what we want to do, here are the do's of essays. We want to have a hook that grabs. We want a short anecdote, a description of something, a quotation, an interesting fact or quote. Really, it can be almost anything. It just has to grab the reader. If you're going to use a quote, though, don't use a basic quote that people know really well. Something from Dr. Seuss or, Thomas Jefferson probably is going to be a little too basic to grab the reader. Use descriptive language. So you want to make your story come alive, but you also don't want to over describe anything. So you want to make sure that your descriptions all have a purpose for being there. You want to try to use action verbs. So you want to go through your essay, look for all the basic verbs, verbs that don't have action, that aren't interesting, like is, are, were. And you want to try to find verbs instead that show activity and show just, energy. What I'll do is I will post underneath in the links below a link to a PDF from the UC Berkeley Career Center on how to make a resume. And on page 8, they have a great list of action verbs. So I recommend you print that out and look at that while you are revising your college essays. You want to try to vary your sentences. So look through your sentences in your draft and actually not quite measure, but see how long they are. So if you just have a series of short sentences or a series of long sentences, can you interject variety in there? So can you have, 2 short sentences and a long one, or, long, short, long, short. So see if you can make sure that your sentences are varied. So maybe what I would recommend is getting a marker, printing it out, the essay, getting a marker, and then making a note of where all the periods are. So then you can see how long the sentences are. You want to speak authentically, use your true voice, show your personality. And you want to always leave the reader with a strong ending. So if you're revising and your endings just aren't coming out, don't worry too much that it will eventually come to you as you continue to revise. It might take a little bit of time for the ending to really come to you, but keep in mind that you want to make sure you don't turn it in without the ending that's strong. So here are some don'ts. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to use a cliche. How do you know that something is a cliche? If you're reading your essay and you've heard it before, you've heard something that you've said before, that's probably a cliche. We use cliches because we've heard them before. They're easy. We don't have to think too hard about them. We just say them. How do you get rid of them? So the way you get rid of them is if you come across a cliche, you want to highlight it, have a special color for cliches, and make sure you go back and you spend time thinking about what you really mean to say other than the cliche. So think harder and say, what am I actually trying to say here? Instead of saying the cliche that I said that I've heard before, what's honest for me to say? Try not to have obvious takeaways. So an obvious takeaway is I learned more from them than they did from me. Right? So if you're doing something that maybe if you're writing on a topic that a lot of kids write on, such as, a missions trip you took, and the message being then, I learned more from them than they did from me. That's a bit of an obvious message that a lot of people have. What is something different and maybe more unique to you that you can say about your topic? What's a unique takeaway for you? Too many SAT words. So too many SAT words will obfuscate your meaning or your takeaway. You want to use SAT words, advanced language sparingly, sort of, like pepper in a dish. You want to use it for flavor. So use the words to sort of enhance your meaning, but you don't want to overwhelm your reader with too many complicated words. So speak honestly, use words when they're necessary. over-exaggerate. So you don't want to over-exaggerate anything that you're saying. You want to be truthful about the impact or the importance of something. You may not see it, but the reader will be able to tell if you are just, saying that something was way more important or way more impactful on you than it actually was. So talk about things that are actually impactful and important to you, and the reader they'll be able to understand your passion and the importance of your topic to you. Okay, so clarity. The next way you can level up your essay is to make sure that it is as clear as possible. So before you move on to your next draft, look at your current draft and make sure that you have answered all aspects of the prompt. So did they ask you about academic and non-academic parts, of what you would do at the school? Did they ask you about your major and about your future career choices? Did they ask you about your influences and your aspirations? So what I like to do is I like to actually highlight different parts of the prompt in different colors. And then I go through the essay and try to highlight with the same color where you answered that section of the prompt. So if they said academically, I'll highlight that, let's say in green, then go through the essay and highlight all the academic parts in green. If they say non-academically as well, then I'll highlight that, let's say in pink, and then do the same thing for the non-academic parts. So that way you can see really what did you focus on in this essay, how much of your essay is being given to what parts of the prompt to make sure that you've answered thoroughly all the parts of the prompt. And make sure that the reader is understanding your purpose. So that make sure when they put your essay down, they can clearly understand without being clunky and too in your face, what do you value? What are your motivations and what's your takeaway? So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the next couple slides. So revise, revise, revise. So I have a couple strategies for revision. So let's discuss these. So you want to make sure that your essay is showing your important qualities, the qualities that you love about yourself, that those are there in your essay. We want when the admissions officer is done with your essay, we want them to put it down, be able to say, this person is, and then be able to list the qualities that you showed. So curious, courageous, tenacious, introspective, whatever it is, make sure that your essay is showing those qualities. What you might want to do is actually write down the qualities that you're trying to show at the bottom of your draft. And as you continue to draft, keep looking back at that list of qualities to make sure you are clearly showing those qualities in your essay. So reverse outlining. So this is a really great way to revise your essay and really take it to the next level. There's going to be a lot of poring over your essay, possibly printing it, physically writing on the printed version of your essay, highlighting it using colors. You really want to interact with your essay. So here are the steps to doing reverse outlining. So look at each paragraph carefully. Sometimes I recommend, that a student will print them up and cut them out so you could actually look at them separate from all the other paragraphs. What is the main point of each paragraph? Actually write it down. So when you read the paragraph, read it by itself and say, what is this paragraph saying to me? Highlight the sentence in that paragraph that clearly shows the thing that you are hoping that paragraph says. When you're done with each paragraph, write down in one sentence something that encompasses what you hope is the essay's message or takeaway or thesis, whatever it is you want to call it. So write it down, say, this is what I want them to get out of it, and write that down. Copy and paste all the main paragraph points and the highlighted lines above your draft in order. Then read those parts out loud. Do they make sense? Is the progression of your essay logical? Are there some parts of your essay that have no reason to be there, that don't add to the progression or the essay path? You might want to reorganize your paragraphs if that's so. So sometimes revision isn't just revising the words, it's sort of looking at the way that you're lining up your paragraphs. So saying, maybe if I switch these two paragraphs, the essay path will be a lot more clear. Then again, look at the paragraphs individually. Does that paragraph focus on one point, or you're trying to make different points in one paragraph? Is that paragraph's point a different point than all the other paragraph points? So you want to make sure that your essay paragraphs don't repeat points. So two paragraphs shouldn't really have the same point. They should all make different points, all points that then add to the message or thesis or takeaway. So does the paragraph add to the message or takeaway? If it doesn't, you might need to cut it. And sometimes, as you're revising, it really is a bummer to cut an essay or to cut a paragraph that isn't working. I recommend, just in case you might need something from that paragraph later, don't necessarily delete it, but paste it under your draft. And I like to title those parts paragraphs that were cut out, or cut out sentences or whatever, taken out, and then paste everything I'm taking out underneath that line. So that way, if you need it later, you still have it. So are there any monster paragraphs? So a monster paragraph is just a giant paragraph that is really overwhelming, is trying to make a lot of points at once, that really should be cut down and split up so that it will make more sense and be a lot more streamlined for the reader. After looking at each paragraph separately and working on each paragraph separately, put your essay aside. This is a really important part of essay revising, and this is why you want to do these essays way in advance, so you actually have time to put your essay down for a day or two and then come back to it with new eyes. It's really important to, every time, to give yourself enough time so that you have time to come back and just pretend, I've never read this essay before. I've never met this person. What is it trying to tell me? What are they trying to tell me? Then once you've relaxed for a little bit, read your entire essay out loud. I can't stress the importance of reading the essay out loud so your ears hear the words that you've written. A lot of times, revision is moved along a lot quicker when the words are heard, because you can hear where the essay doesn't make sense. You can hear where the grammar is not correct. And it's a lot better, it's a lot easier to hear it sometimes than to just read the words. So do this. So this entire structure, and then if you want to keep making revisions, then do it all over again. But here are the steps to reverse outlining. So what to look for in your draft. As you're outlining, this is what you want to keep in mind. You want to make sure that your core values are really coming through and that the values are varied. That's also really important. You don't want to have the same values. So if you're looking, and if I said to write down the values on the bottom of your draft before you continue revising, you don't want to then write down hard work, determination, perseverance, because those are very similar. But some interesting values that are very different from each other, that maybe the reader would think, oh, wow, I wouldn't think to put autonomy, resourcefulness, healthy boundaries, and diversity together. Those seem very interesting to put together. You want to be vulnerable. So I mentioned this a couple slides ago, but you want to make sure that the essay is really coming from a deeper, vulnerable place. So does the reader, do you sound like you are coming from your most honest place, or do you sound like you're holding the reader at arm's length? If the essay is written so it's like you're holding the reader at arm's length and you're really not being vulnerable for them, they won't really know, they won't feel by the end of the essay that they really know you. And it's those essays where the writer has become vulnerable that the reader feels, I know them. And when they know you, they'll go to bat for you. So just remember that, to really try to dig deep and go from your most, go to your most honest areas. Do you have so what moments? So do you have interesting and important connections? Can you identify several so what moments in this essay? If there's only one, or if there are none, then you really want to go back and make sure there are. You really want to have things that are truly illuminating in your essay. That were illuminating to you, then they'll be illuminating to the reader. So craft, you want to make sure that your craft is there, so that you're spending time really looking at the words and making careful choices. I recommend writing with the thesaurus right next to you. Sometimes I just like thesaurus.com and just saying, what's a better way of saying this is truly conveying what I mean to convey, right? Does the reader hold interest through all parts of the essay? Is it just a seamless line, that will keep the reader's interest throughout the essay? All right, that's the end of how to take your essay to the next level. If you have any questions, concerns, or requests, please let me know.